I wear a Stetson now. Stetsons are cool. You know, that quote would really have worked better if I actually wore a Stetson. But I don't own one, so... Hello and welcome back to the Doctor Who Marathon. I'm your host McEdam, and today we're going to be talking about the Series 6 two-part opener, The Impossible Astronaut and Day of the Moon. We'll also likely be talking about its prequel episode, which aired on the internet, I think it was the day before. These stories were written by Stephen Moffat, with the main televised story being directed by Toby Haynes. There's no credited director for the prequel episode, but guessing it was Toby Haynes due to the fact that the location and the style of it anyway feels like Toby Haynes. This series kicked off a new, well, not new, but a much more series arc focused series, with some episodes actually not working as standalone episodes, standalone stories. For example, this one with certain big storylines which has huge amount of focus within the episode being left for later on in the series, which has been heavily criticised, and Stephen Moffat has taken a lot of flack for it, which if you've been watching this for a while, you might realise that I am somebody who's not a fan of this kind of storytelling. However, I do in some ways respect Stephen Moffat for doing it. He's trying to get the Doctor Who into a much more mainstream, a much more modern viewership. And what do viewers like these days? Big bombastic storylines that crosses over with each other and last for years and years. So I can't really blame him for taking the show to where it was naturally going to go with what people expect shows to be these days. But as somebody who grew up with the classic series and somebody who feels like the most singular episodes work better, I do kind of struggle with these kind of episodes. But I understand why he did it, so there you go. This story also is the formal introduction to the Silence, which was teased in the previous series, Series 5. We get the first appearance of the Order, and they're these big, giant alien creatures that have a unique ability which ties into Stephen Moffat's love of you can't do a particular thing due to the villain. In this case, it's remember them. So, yeah, this story is, when it first aired, was massively praised and was considered a huge return to form for the series, and the directing was absolutely gorgeous, and the new bombastic style for the series was really something that audience gravitated towards, and were really something that that people just really enjoyed. People really enjoyed it when it came out. In fact, I really enjoyed it as well. I also remember the night before of Impossible Astronaut, because I remember the BBC were teasing that they were going to show an image of the episode, and I remember staying up all night just constantly refreshing the BBC page, and my family at the time were having a house party, and I was sitting in my room upstairs on my own just refreshing the page because I really just wanted to know. And it hit 12, the BBC released a image of it, which was a massive spoiler for the first 10 minutes. Spoiler warning, the image that the BBC showed was actually Matt Smith's 11th Doctor regenerating. And my jaw dropped. And he also looked like he was incredibly ill as well. Clearly looking at some sort of damage. His hair was all like frizzled. But like he had that glow. And I remember just having my jaw just drop, and it's like, what? 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 So I had to watch that episode. And at the time I really enjoyed it. However, I think like most people, like a lot of people, time has not been kind to this two-parter. Especially how, as I've stated before, this story is the start of the story arc heavy. I mean, the Stephen Moffat era started with the story arc being a lot more heavier than it was during the Russell T Davies days, with the Crack in Time essentially taking over plots. However, here it felt like the seeds, it was made to be a part of the big story arc. It wasn't like other episodes where it was a single episode and then the twist is that it's part of the storyline. So yeah, but a lot of people have fallen out of love with this story, and I included myself. And I feel like the main big thing of that is retrospective. We get to see now, as an audience member who knows now where these plot lines go, where these plot lines are heading to, and realise that they are a massive, massive disappointment. And when you watch this episode, all you can just see is the spark of something which you now know will disappoint you. So the episode just constantly teases stuff which doesn't become that satisfying of a watch later down the line, if that makes any sense. So let's actually get into the episode. The story actually starts off with this montage of the Doctor finding himself in certain aspects of history, and it's the whole Stephen Moffat wibbly wobbly tiny wimey, the Doctor travelling through all of space and time. I like how he's in the Laurel and Hardy dance routine, which actually is a reference to the Academy Awards, because Billy Crystal did the exact same thing, where he green screened himself into that dance, that Pacific dance as well, which is really, really weird. I mean, the Academy Awards, as well as River Song also getting a letter, along with Amy and Rory getting a letter to take to Utah, America, in which the Doctor is there, wears a Stetson now, and he takes him to this cafe. The Doctor and River talk about their diaries, and it turns out that the Doctor has been he's done a lot of stuff with River. At this point, he's done basically a majority of their ventures together, but he's brought them out there for a mission. And the pre-credit sequence to part one is the Doctor stating Space 1969, which is a reference to the TV show Space 1999, with that kind of freezing space, the year, that was like the thing. So it's a reference to that. And the intro is a good way of getting yourself interested in it, because you see the Doctor getting into all of these places are very bombastic. It does kind of feel distracting to the plot, but it's a lot of fun. Before we get into the actual episode itself, let's talk about the prequel, which I'm going to be honest, this prequel just isn't that interesting. Not outside, not when you consider it part of the story, because essentially we basically learn the exact same thing, thing in the actual episode. In the prequel, we see President Nixon in the Oval Office taking a phone call, and then a phone call is from a little girl who somehow can get into Nixon's private number. As she states, you've got to come and help me. the spaceman, he is coming to eat me. Beware of the silence, they're behind you, these monsters are behind you. Oh no, she says, the spaceman told me of your number. So go look behind you, there's something behind you. And Nixon's just like, there's nothing behind me. What? How did you get this number? But she hangs up before any answer, and he turns around, he sits, lays back, and you can see a creature in the background, out of focus, which is actually the first appearance of the Silence. So, yeah, the prequel isn't that interesting, to be honest, considering part of the story, because we learn the exact same thing, and we have a much more better introduction to that and to the Silence within the episode itself, in my opinion. But yeah, it just doesn't, it's not that, it's pretty weak. But yeah, so let's get into the actual episode itself of The Impossible Astronaut. Stephen Moffat's era, the two-parters always have, like, the episodes have a completely different feel from each other, and the first episode has this, like, American politics feel, with the majority of the episode taking place in President Nixon's Oval Office. But that's for later on. The Doctor has taken them to a beach back in 2011, where he's basically trying to, like, explain to his planet, you did more than just look at the moon, did you? As Rory is like, hold on, the trip to the moon was in 1969. Is that where we're going? As the Doctor's just, like, smiling to himself, and he's having these funny moments where he's drinking wine. Amy can see someone from a distance, however, when she looks away, she completely forgets, and she starts feeling a little bit sick. All of a sudden, out of nowhere, an astronaut appears from the lake. It just comes out of the lake, and the Doctor seemingly knows who this is, tells Amy, Rory and River Song, whatever you do, do not interfere. As the Doctor goes into the background, that's twice I've done that, into the background, and we have this conversation between the Doctor and the astronaut, but we don't actually hear anything. It's actually a kind of nod to Logopolis, in which the Doctor is seen talking to a mysterious entity. We even have that moment where the Doctor puts his head down, realising what's about to happen. As the astronaut puts its hand up, and our characters are just like, what's happening, what's going on? Suddenly, BAM! The Doctor gets shot. And our characters are, like, running towards them. Rory stops Amy as the astronaut has a deadly weapon, and the Doctor starts regenerating in the first 10 minutes of the episode. And this is the image I saw, and I remember everybody's jaw dropping at this moment as he turns to Amy, Rory and River Song, and he just says, "I'm sorry." He looks up, he puts his arms out, he's about to regenerate. And then you see him from the distance, he starts glowing, he starts bursting. Suddenly, BAM! Another shot. Killing him stone dead during his regeneration. And that second shot, where it stopped the Doctor halfway through regeneration, killing him completely, was a massive shot. We've never seen that before in any era of the show. We know that Time Lords can die. They can, if the regeneration process isn't complete, they can not come back and stay dead. But it's really fascinating to see it in some way. Retroactively, this scene actually makes no sense. It also is where the wedding of River Song actually takes place within this moment, which is the finale of Series 6. But we'll get onto that when we get onto that. And so a strange man appears behind them, who confirms it's like, this is most certainly the Doctor, and he told me to bring gasoline, and he also contacted me with a letter. And so our characters are like, who are you? I'm Arthur Delaware the Third. Canton Elliot Delaware the Third. And he basically explains, it's like, I'm not going to see you again, but you'll be seeing me, as he just wanders off. And Canton had on his postcard 4, and then River Song kind of clicks as they go back into the canteen. They get to the canteen. River realizes that on the letters they're numbered. Amy had 3, River Song had 2, Canton had 4. But when they get to the canteen, there's a letter on the table for number 1. The exact same letter, the same TARDIS colour blue on the card. But the number 1, who did the Doctor send out first? Who was the Doctor's most important? Who did the Doctor trust the most? Suddenly, out from the doors, out from the bathroom, restroom, the Doctor appears, seemingly unharmed, as our characters are just in utter awe of just what happened. It turns out that this Doctor is actually a younger Doctor, a Doctor that has just come from his adventures with Amy and Rory in The Christmas Carol, as well as meeting Sarah Jane in the episode Death to the Doctor. And so, and then we get the whole scene where it's just like, they're trying to basically confirm that Doctor states his age is 909, which is different because the older Doctor said he was 111. 900. No, he said different age. That's all that matters. An older age, and we also realise that he doesn't know anybody that him and River were mentioning earlier on in the episode. Like, he doesn't even know who Jim the Fish is, and so our characters basically realise that the Doctor in the future sent himself to his death. He invited all of his friends to his wake, essentially, as they basically tell the Doctor he is recruited by a man, something to do with a man called Elliot Delaware the Third, and something to do with Space 1969. And there's a great moment here where the Doctor, first of all, the Doctor has to, he basically tries to egg them on to tell them what's going on, and he is worried that there's something strange, something odd about our characters. They start talking, trying behind his back, as he doesn't understand what's going on. But then there's this great moment. One of my favourite bits in this episode is the Doctor. He's being as bombastic. He gives the date. He puts the time. Puts Delaware the Third. He makes up this. He comes up with a plan with River to meet Delaware at a bar where they basically track him, and he goes to the Oval Office for a mysterious meeting with the president. He's a former FBI. He left the FBI for reasons which will be explained later on in the episode. But the bit I love in this is where the characters are like, right, is that where we're going? And the Doctor's just like, no, we're going home. Well, you are anyway. And River Song, you're going back to Stonehenge. Me, I'm going back because I'm missing my biplane lessons. And he's doing it in a jolliful way at the start. And as soon as he sits down, he kind of expects the characters to be judgmental or be to have a go at him. So he kind of has this like bombastic, the 11th Doctor way. And then he sits down, and the first thing he does is put his hand over his face like this, as he's basically preparing for this mass disappointment in his characters. And so he then goes on, it's like, what, do you think I'll just go to a mysterious summons? Who sent you? Who told you all this? And they're like, we can't tell you, but you just have to believe us. But River, the Doctor's like, me trust you? No. Who did you kill? What put you in the stone cage? And Amy's just like, trust me instead. I put my life on the line. Fish fingers and custard. You have to trust me. And so the Doctor's just like, okay, Amy, I trust you. And that is a really great scene. I also want to talk about Murray Gold's music in this story. Oh my god, the music is gorgeous. With the Americanized version of I Am the Doctor with the acoustic guitars and the lowering of the violins. Absolutely gorgeous. There's also a track, it's called Apollo 11, which was later used retroactively, earlier used as the introduction to the War Doctor in the story Night of the Doctor. So that's pretty cool. That's a really cool track. But yeah, there's some really great stand-up musical moments in this story. And I feel like then the story does kind of go downhill from here. We still get some really fun moments. The Doctor puts the TARDIS in invisible as he sets the TARDIS in the White House, but he didn't realise he actually puts it in the middle of the Oval Office, whilst Nixon is showing Canton a tape of his recorded of his discussion with the little girl. To which Nixon originally believes it's a boy because when he asks for its name, when he asks where is she and what's her name, and she says like Hamilton, Clampton, Jefferson or something like that, and the Doctor kind of works out, and he's just kind of like silently in the room as he opens the door because some reason the scanners don't work, and he's just like in the Oval Office with these characters not even realise he's there, as he quietly gets his notebook and pen out and he's writing what they're saying. After Nixon realises, the Doctor kind of just like eggs him on to continue the speech, only to realise, oh wait, oh crap. That's a great moment. And now let's talk about like President Nixon, because I feel like this is where the story kind of really starts dropping the ball, because Doctor Who's, one of the main things you can do with Doctor Who, which you can't do with the majority of fiction, is the historicals. Doctor Who's a franchise which can tell deep emotional stories which connect to the past, with the previous series having a great phenomenal historical with Vincent and the Doctor, and we can have a story which explores the story of President Nixon before Watergate, and the interviews with Jack Frost. Here he's played by Stuart Milligan, and he does a fantastic job. I mean, it's like Nixon came back to life and was playing this role himself. He looks the part. They gave him a prosthetic face to make him look more like Nixon, and it's a fantastic job. You really believe it's his actual face, and it's a spot-on impression. But in terms of a narrative flow, the story isn't about Nixon. He's just a character in the narrative. He's a very important character in the fact that he can get the Doctor and and our characters into certain places later on in the episode, in the story. But here, he's in for the main vocal point of the story, he's not. He's just sort of a convenience in the narrative, which is really disappointing. And I feel like this is the start of it dropping the ball. We see now a younger Clanton Delaware the third, played by Mark Sheppard, who, fun fact, the older version, which we saw in 2011, is played by his father. I can't remember his father's name, but yeah, it's his father is playing his older version, which is really fun. You might remember Mark Stewart from series such as Firefly. He's a big sci-fi actor that appears in a lot of sci-fi TV series. So it was only about time when Doctor Who was trying to make it big in America that he would make his first Doctor Who appearance. It's really cool to see such a not maybe a well-known figure, but a well-respected actor in the series. And he essentially becomes another companion, essentially. And the story does a great job of actually balancing each character so that each character has a moment to shine. With Rory having some great lines, Amy getting some great moments, River Song easily be one of the standouts. The Doctor and Clanton basically forming this kind of group. And the Doctor basically promises he's going to track down this little girl. He knows exactly what to look out for. However, shoot me and you never know. There's also a reference to The Graduate, where when they threaten to kill Amy, Rory, and River Song, the Doctor basically explains that they are secret ops from Scotland Yard, and these are my co-conspirators, the nose, the legs, and Mrs. Robinson. She's just like, I hate you. No, you don't. And so they start tracking him down. Amy starts meeting the Silence for the first time properly, as she sees one in the doorway, and then when Rory goes between them, she forgets and feels sick. She asks to go to the toilet, and we get a scene in which she is formally then introduced to a Silent, this big grey alien with these gigantic heads and hands, and they seem to have electrokinetic energy, and they also have the ability to make people forget them when they're not looking, which is again more established by the fact that there's this woman, that gets in between Amy and the alien, and every time she turns away she keeps forgetting, and Amy basically clicks on what's happening and she takes a photo of the Silence, and the Silence basically threatens to get Amy to tell the Doctor what he must know and what he must never know. And this is another thing where it really hurts the episode, because you think it's talking about the death of the Doctor. However, it's not. It's talking about something else, which will become a part of the plot, in the part of the cliffhanger. I just realised we haven't talked about Dave the Moon at all. So yeah, we're going to change the format a little bit, because otherwise we'd be here all day. We'll just talk about let's just talk about like the things I do like and don't like. What I do like, Toby Haynes directing. Both episodes look absolutely gorgeous, with the first episode having this really bright, sunny feel to it, with the second episode, Day to the Moon, having a very dark and this muddy look to it. There's a scene in which they go to an abandoned orphanage which was closed down. However, there's a guy that not only still works there because he's looking after a child, but he doesn't realise what year it is, and there's these paintings seemingly out of blood saying like, get out of here, get away, and he is this really just strange, odd character, and for some reason when I watch this episode, he always sticks out in my mind as this really interesting character. He's just so weird, so odd, and the performance does a fantastic job of getting that out, and you can just see he's messed up. He is absolutely messed up. Matt Smith's performance is another highlight. Murray Gold's music and highlight. Karen Gillan, Arthur Darwell, Alex Kingston, Mark Shepherd. But let's talk about the little girl, because the story in the two parts is essentially about the little girl. She gets captured by the astronaut suit. She claims that it's eaten her as our TARDIS team start running, taking the TARDIS to take her to where they suspect that she is, and they run down to her. And Amy is like, I have to tell you something, and it's here which reveals what a twist in which she is pregnant, and that is such a forced. Why tell the Doctor at that moment? It's so like you got the tense, there's the action. Delaware is injured on the floor. They hear the girl screaming, and Amy's just like, I have to tell you, I'm pregnant. And the Doctor is just like, what? But like, why that moment? Why pick that moment? It's such an awkward moment, and it's so clearly forced into the narrative as the astronaut starts appearing, and Amy grabs Clanton's gun and turns around and fires as the Doctor screams, no, don't shoot, as the astronaut suit lifts its visor to reveal that the little girl is actually inside the suit. And that's actually cliffhanger for the impossible astronaut. And that is just, actually a great cliffhanger to an extent, because it does lead into a very interesting idea for the next story. You have a character who's just revealed to us that she's pregnant. Sure, they picked an awkward time and to really like heighten the drama. You can also imagine the EastEnders theme when she says, I'm pregnant. Doom, 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 doom. But the idea of Amy panicking, because she's seen the astronaut and she thinks, right, if I stop the astronaut now, I can stop the Doctor dying in the future. So without hesitation, she picks up the gun and starts firing, so hopefully to save the Doctor, only to seemingly shoot a little girl. That is messed up, and you could do this storyline in which Amy can feel kind of guilty and feel like it's like, hold on, how could I be a responsible mother if I almost killed a child? Like, I'm a kid murderer, and how am I responsible to look after a child? The story, frustratingly, does not do that. In fact, in the Next Time trailer, yes, there's a Next Time trailer, they actually show all our characters escape their current predicament, and they also show an image of the little girl where the shot had been fired and had missed, basically resolving the cliffhanger in the Next Time trailer. What a poor way to execute that. But the actual episode itself doesn't actually help, as Amy, the episode starts off, part 4, what am I on about? Day of the Moon starts off with another montage. 3 months later, our characters have been hunted down by Clanton, who finds them all in these different locations, and these characters have been marking themselves. With the exception of the Doctor, he's been taken to Area 51, which is actually the second time that we're aware that he has been there. He's been there. He's also been there in the 60s before. 50s, sorry. He's been there a decade before in the episode Dreamland. So that's kind of interesting. As the Doctor's now like grown a beard, and we also learn that they are using white dwarf star alloy to basically build the Doctor the perfect prison. Now I don't know about anybody else, but I thought this was going to be an origin story to the Alliance, and this was going to be like a prototype of the Pandorica. No, it's just Stephen Moffat just using same aspects of his previous stories in episodes now. And this is something that Stephen Moffat would then have an issue with, is reusing ideas that he's already done. The idea of the little girl, that's like the important thing. That's almost the girl in the fireplace. The girl also having, the little child having really strong abilities is in some ways the empty child. But yeah, and also the Doctor seemingly dying is something which I think every series of the Stephen Moffat era does, and it's so frustrating and so annoying. And nothing in this episode, everything in the Day of the Moon just falls flat on a narrative structure. In my opinion, it looks better, it looks cooler. I love the settings of the abandoned orphanage. There's also, as well, in terms of the larger plot line, in Impossible Astronaut, River Song and Rory find the Lodger TARDIS from the episode The Lodger, and in the cliffhanger, Rory is seemingly attacked by some electrical energy, presumably the silence, as River Song turns around and it's just like, Rory! The next time we see them is in a flashback as they're just running fine with no explanation onto what happened to them. It's really strange editing, it's really odd, and again, looking back, it really does hurt this episode. But like, nothing really works. Most of the episode is constant teasing for the next story, the next adventure, and a great example is the whole pregnancy thing, because that was brought up in the last episode, not to tell an interesting story here, but to go, hey, we're going to do that, we're going to lead that into a plot line later on. As in the next episode in Day of the Moon, Amy is just like, oh, I was actually wrong, I'm not pregnant. Now, I do understand that does happen, false pregnancies do happen in real life. However, setting up a plot line and having such an interesting plot, only for it to do nothing because it doesn't want to do that yet, because, it's a spoiler warning for later on in the series, Amy is pregnant, but due to the plot line and stuff, this version of Amy isn't pregnant. It's confusing, we'll get onto it when we talk about A Good Man Goes to War. But yeah, so like the story is in this awkward position where it sets up stuff, but then it has to like devalue its own plot line because it doesn't want to talk about this yet. Another aspect as well is with the girl. She becomes essentially the vocal point. She is like the main, she is the one that needs to be rescued, needs to be saved. But also her identity is a mystery. Who is she? The next time we actually see her in this episode, Amy in the abandoned orphanage finds essentially a room of this little girl, having all of these pictures, but she finds an image, a photo of actually Amy holding a baby. She's just like,
Startled.
what? What? How am I in this picture? What's going on? She turns around and the girl is in the astronaut suit and the silence appear and Amy gets taken. However, later on in the episode, seemingly the girl just escapes on her own. She seemingly breaks out of the suit and she is on the run. She escapes. Actually, hold on. I just realised you see her escape in the orphanage. You see her behind the wall. So how did the suit get into the repair? I don't understand. Oh, but yeah, the whole girl-ish story is with the girl, and then as soon as she becomes irrelevant to telling the setting up, because she's already set up, the story forgets about her essentially. In fact, the ending of the story awkwardly has the Doctor just like question. It's like, who is this girl? Who is she? Why did the Silence want her? How is she so powerful? Or we could just leave it for another moment and have more adventures. I'm not even joking. That's actually part of the dialogue. Oh, Stephen Moffat! That's not how you write storylines. You can't just abandon a storyline because you don't want to tell it now. Why doesn't this story go with the Doctor trying to find the girl? He just abandons her because he doesn't want to tell this story now. It also really hurts, in my opinion, the Doctor's character. The Doctor is a character who loves science and he likes the truth. He's a character that seeks out the truth. It's why some of the classic series works, because there's this mystery, and usually our character, the side characters assume something, and the Doctor doesn't like to assume. He doesn't believe in ghosts or the supernatural. He also doesn't like a mystery, so he just has to push forward. He has to go forward, and he doesn't believe like in coincidences and all that. So, he goes out. It's also a reason why he doesn't like River Song to a degree. He doesn't like the mystery. He doesn't like the fact that there's these secrets. Why doesn't the Doctor go hunt for this girl? At the very least, he knows that she is alone. The Silence had taken her from an orphanage. He knows that the girl is essentially vulnerable, homeless, and is missing. But the Doctor's just like, no, we'll let her come to her. We'll find out another day. Yeah. The Silence takes Amy to the launcher TARDIS, and for some reason they have this big scene, which seemingly seems like it's teasing something, it's setting up something, as they explain that Amy has been there for many days, but Amy's just like, no, I've only just arrived. But they keep, this scene, for some reason, has a lot of emphasis, so it feels like that's kind of setting up something, but it's actually not. We also have, they have these things in their hands, our characters. There's a lot of stuff I want to talk about, but I haven't had time to talk about. And essentially, it's connecting to what Amy is saying now, and the Silence somehow can rip it all out of her, as Rory and the Doctor can hear what Amy is saying now. And Rory is like, don't worry, Amy, I'm coming to save you, I'm coming to rescue you. But Amy seemingly is crying for the Doctor, and Rory is clearly torn by this. The performance by Alpha Darwell is absolutely phenomenal. that is just a great performance. There is no doubt about it. And Amy, there's also one point where Amy is just like, it's always been you. I know I don't say it, but it's always been you and your stupid face when you fell out of the sky. As it's implying that Amy is in love with the Doctor, whereas Rory can hear this, and Rory is completely heartbroken by this, but he's still determined to save Amy, and so they go on this mission together. They capture Silence, to which it's revealed their name as the Doctor gets flashbacks of Series 5. Here's a question for you, which is never asked. The Silence the Silence will fall motif. The Silence want to fall? What? The Silence want to fail, essentially. Want their civilization to collapse. That's what fall, unless they generally mean that they will fall. It's really strange, it's bizarre. Their characterization in part 2, where we're supposed to learn more about them, really fails in setting them up as a threat. We don't really get an idea of what they want, what they're after. It's really just, you don't really get a feeling for them. We know that they kind of hate the Doctor. We know that they want a astronaut suit, and we know that the astronaut suit will kill the Doctor in the future. However, their only real explanation is that they want Silence to fall. It is explained later on in Wedding of River Song, but in terms of this story, it does a poor job at executing what the Silence will fall means, and the fact that they are called Silence makes you like. And there's also a bit where the Doctor talks about Rome, and Rory points out that Rome fell, basically heightening the connection that the fall and the Silence will fall means the collapse of a civilization. And yeah, it just doesn't really work. And the story ends, actually it'd be quite interesting. They actually used the moon landing as a secret weapon. Canton basically gets the injured Silence that they captured to basically say, you should kill us all on sight. And they show the moon landing, the first man on the moon, a video clip which will be shown throughout history. However, the video clip shows then the Silence that says, you will kill us all on sight. So every human then has now been programmed to essentially go on a killing spree every time they see a Silence, as the Silence is basically their civilization falls. And then we get this action scene where Amy is shooting, and the Doctor kind of uses his sonic screwdriver. Can it shoot lasers now? It's not like you had 2 episodes to explain Stephen Moffat. But yeah, the action scene, in my opinion, is also poorly handled. You just see a few shots of the Silence collapsing from a laser beam, but there's only one person really, and then it cuts to the Doctor just whizzing about. Doesn't really make a lot of sense, to be honest. And then, as I state, then they take River Song back. The Doctor's just like, hey, you know that girl? Who is she? Actually, forget about it. We need to go and see pirates or something. Which really hurts this episode. The story ends on a cliffhanger where we see the little girl now homeless. Thank you, Doctor, for that. In New York, and she basically proclaims to a homeless man that she is dying. But don't worry, it's okay. She can fix it. Her hands start to glow, and then her face, as she bursts out with energy, she has the power to regenerate. What? 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 And that is The Impossible Astronaut, The Day of the Moon, and its prequel. Overall, it's a mess. It's an absolute mess. It sets up plot lines that go nowhere later on. The plot lines set up here are poorly executed, with plot lines being set up for future episodes only for them to be quickly taken out of the, forcefully taken out of the plot line, because you don't want to tell those stories yet. You want to tell them later on for Good Man Goes to War and The Wedding of River Song. And it really hurts this story looking back. However, I will admit, on a nostalgic note, I did really enjoy this story. Watching the story does kind of take me back to when I first saw it. It's one of those episodes where it's late enough, which I have strong memories of watching it for the first time, where I remember the night before and seeing that photo and being wrapped around in that plot line. However, as somebody who's getting tired of these kind of plot lines, this story was such a frustrating episode to view, and I feel like there's not really much worth here now for a newer audience to really get their teeth into, unless you don't know what happens with these plot lines. So yeah, overall this story isn't that great. So that is The Impossible Astronaut and Day of the Moon. So join me next time, where suddenly Clyde finds himself at the epicenter of a hate mob, as everybody out of nowhere just seems to absolutely hate him. So join me next time for The Curse of Clive Langer, and I'll see you next time on the Doctor Who Marathon. Ta-da!